Hey, okay, so we met at Fun Launch Live, and I thought the coolest thing was your social media name. So how did you come up with a name like Tax Deed Wolf, by the way?
Man, good question. And it really everybody has their animal, right? So we did this thing. I was in a multi-level marketing at one point, and we had this little thing or I don't even know what to call it, but we're going over and trying to figure out everybody's animal. Like, hey, what's your animal? What's your animal? And the closest animal I related to was a wolf, and it really stuck with me. It's like, I can operate well in a pack, but if I got to get out there and do it myself, you best believe I'm going to get out there and do it myself, right? However it has to get done, it's going to get done. And when we niched down to investing in tax deeds, I was just like, man, I'm gonna be the tax deed wolf. And nobody else was doing it. It was there. I looked on IG, the handle was available. I was like, that's it. And I told my wife, I was like, hey, babe, I'm sticking with this tax deed wolf thing. And she was like, go for it. And we stuck with it and remained consistent. The rest was history.
Shout out Sean, man.
Changing the game through real estate, yeah. Changing the game through real estate. I can never wait. Got what it takes to got this on my plate, and I got a budget teach you how to save. Listen to this podcast, you'll be amazed. Play this any morning, any night, any day. We're the winning team. We were born to be brave. Yeah, changing the game through real estate.
So, hey, Joseph, welcome to the Changing the Game Through Real Estate podcast. Well, I guess this one is kind of more or less the Through Tax Deed podcast. But can you just kind of tell everyone who doesn't know who you are, how you kind of got into real estate? I know we talked briefly that you were in the military. Like, what really made you decide, like, hey, real estate's the best investment to get into?
Before we get into that, was that you rapping on that?
No, sir.
Intro?
I wish. So, funny story. One of my best friends, he played for football for Wisconsin, the Wisconsin Badgers, and he does a lot of music. And me and him have been like brothers for life, and he created that for me. And his name's King Reynard. So if you want to look him up on like Apple Podcasts, all that stuff, he's on there. But yeah, shout out to him because that was definitely not me.
But to answer your question, yeah, I started out in the Army, originally from New Orleans, Louisiana, and then Hurricane Katrina just kind of sent us, everywhere. Ended up in Georgia in high school, joined the Army when I was 17. I was a medic. Then they sent me to nursing school, and after deploying and just working for other people my entire life and clocking in, clocking out, at some point, after reading books like Rich Dad Poor Dad, and just started hanging around people, other, millionaires, right? Hanging around the right crowd. At some point, I was just like, man, I'm worth way more than this, $25 an hour, this $30 an hour. And looking at all these billionaires and stuff, I'm like, man, what are they doing? Right? Like we all ask, like, hey, what are they doing? How do you do that? And it was real estate. The answer was literally real estate. And almost, even if they were in some other industry, they all had real estate making them more money. Myself as a nurse, I didn't have that much money. So I was like, man, and I lacked knowledge. I didn't know about using other people's money and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
So I had a little bit of money saved up, and I was like, what's a industry I can get in for this amount of money? And it was tax deeds. And the rest was history. I got my first property, $3,000. The second one was $1,900, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna stick with this.
Because most people I talk to doesn't really actually do like tax deeds. I feel like that's not really a common thing. So like, what was like, dang, this is like such a unique advantage, because the biggest issue is like getting into real estate is how expensive it is. It's like, okay, well, even if I want to do a $100,000 house, you have to put, let's say, 20% down. It's like, dang, a lot of people don't have $20,000 to put down. So what kind of got you into that strategy, like to do tax deeds? And I know you've bought them for like less than like $1,000, $2,000, and I'm definitely interested in hearing more about that.
Yeah, definitely. And for anybody who doesn't know what the heck we're talking about, right? Because some people are in my, hey, can you do my taxes? So what tax deeds are, when you own property in the US, you have to pay what's called property taxes, right? Unless you're 100% disabled veteran or some other exemption. When you have a mortgage, you have what's called escrow. Your taxes and your insurance are included in your escrow, right? But when you own the property, just because you don't have a mortgage doesn't mean you don't have to, you don't stop paying property taxes, right? So you still have to pay those property taxes every year. For those individuals who do not pay their property taxes, their county takes their property and they sell it at an auction. So for anybody who's listening that didn't understand that, that's the process, right? When we go into these auctions, you don't need good credit, right? You don't have to have any type of license. You really just have to understand the process, and you have to have a little bit of cash to work with. So me at the time, it was $8,000. I had $8,000 in my savings account, and I was like, you know what? I'm about to go get some property. So went to my county clerk of court, found the website, started diving in, learning the process, and like I said, bought my first one, 3,000, sold it for 10. Next one, I got $1,900. Then another one, 3,000. Another one, 5,000. And then we started selling them for more. Right after we knew what we were doing, the
Yeah.
5,000 turned into 18,500. Right. So I mean, we were doing some pretty solid flips, and then in a matter of a few months, it's like, man, I made more money than the average American salary already. And I was like, man, this
Yeah.
is a lucrative, this is a pretty lucrative investment. So, we had made like $30,000 in a few months off of just tax deed flips. So I was, man, I stuck with it.
So so you just went to your county's clerk and to get it that way? Because I've never really heard it around Virginia. Are like certain states, are they like some certain states do it, some certain states don't? Because I'm honestly not, like, I'm here in Virginia and I'm not actually sure if like you can do that in Virginia. Is it like certain state by state that does it, or?
So yeah, that's a really good question. It's based off your state. You're either going to live in a tax deed state, a tax lien state, or what we call a tax redemption deed state. So I break it down into three types of investing, right? It's all tax sale, but there's different types of tax sales. So if you live in Georgia or Texas, right, for example, those are tax redemption deed states. If you go in there and you win an auction, there's a redemption period. The owner has a certain amount of time they can pay you back. It's typically about 6 months. They have to pay you back, but they have to pay you back with interest. Or if they don't, you get the property, right? With a tax lien, the difference is what's a typical tax lien state? Louisiana, Mississippi. Tax lien, you're paying the person's debt for them, right? If you owe $3,000, I come in and I pay that $3,000 and I get a lien on your property, first position. If you don't pay me back that $3,000 plus interest, then I can make a claim for your property, right? And not every state, it means a lien's going to turn into deeds. Some states, liens will turn into deeds. But in an actual deed state like Florida, the redemption periods, all those lien periods are already over. If I go online, I win the auction, that property is literally mine as soon as I make the payment.
Oh wow, interesting. Yeah. So how can you? So all, like, no matter what state you're in, they do one of those three, right? Okay. So in other words, I just need to find out what Virginia is. But
And it's all the same process. You really just have to know the steps of doing the research, because that's the most important part is doing the due diligence. But Virginia is a tax deed state, so we can definitely help you out with that.
yeah. So your first tax deed you got. So you just went to county clerk, you bought it, and did you like not really know what you were doing? You're like, oh man, I mean, all right, I could fork this out. Did it? And you're like, oh, here's this property. You're like, what? like So what was your first deal? Like, how'd that go out from like start to finish? How much money you made? Like, if you don't mind me asking, how much
Yeah,
process go?
definitely. So the first deal I did, man, I had no idea what the hell I was doing. I'm not. I saw cheap property. I was trigger happy. I was gonna buy the first one that I could get in my budget. To be honest with you, I kind of lucked out. I bought a empty lot in the hood. Right, bought an empty
Yeah.
lot kind of in the hood. It was in Daytona Beach, Florida. I bought it. I was super excited though. Like, right, man, I got my first investment property, $3,000. Happy, happy, happy. Listed it for sale, and I was getting phone calls like the same day. As soon as I put the sign up, even the neighbors were calling me, like, "Man, I was wondering who owned this property. This and that." And learned a lot in that entire process. Right, I bought this property, didn't do no type of lick of research. Only thing I did was actually go see it, and it had liens on it. Right, that was the first mistake. It had liens on it, so I didn't even know how to like go search for liens. I didn't know what liens were. Luckily for me, some liens the tax deed sale will supersede some of those liens, right? They'll die off.
Yeah.
But some liens will stay, and the new owner is responsible for them. And those were the liens that I had. But lucky for me, the liens were only $3,000, so it wasn't nothing crazy. It was $3,000. And when I finally found someone to buy that property from me, he was going to build a house on it anyway. So I was, when he did his research, he actually came back to me. He's like, "Hey, I found a couple of liens on this and blah blah blah." And I was like, "You know what?" I was freaking out, like, "Oh crap, he's not gonna buy it now." And he was just like, "You know what? I'll take care of the liens. It's only $3,000, not a big deal. I'm gonna
Yeah.
build a house up on it anyway." And I mean, I got lucky, man.
Yeah.
Completely lucky.
So I guess you could go and you buy it as tax lien for $3,000, and they can have a lien on it for like the mortgage is like 200,000, but it's only worth 150. Because that way you can kind of get hurt that way, or how do you do your due diligence phase now to kind of limit that?
Right. So you got to check. There's so many things that we check for now, like like we need to know if there's HOA fees, right? You got to know everything. What can be built on it, right? The one mistake people do is they have all these plans for property before they buy it, right? Oh, I'm gonna turn this into an Airbnb, and we forget that everywhere is not cool with Airbnb,
Yeah,
right?
right.
You have to do so much research. Is this even zoned appropriately? What, like, do they allow Airbnb here? Will they allow a builder to put a 3-bedroom, 2-bath? So there was just so much research now that we do, even when we're buying an empty land parcel. So we need to know, we need to check with the city, check for zoning, right? Hey, what can we put here? Another thing we need to do, you can check with the city for liens, or you can just do title searches, right? Make sure it has a clean chain of title. Go ahead and check and see what other liens they have on it. Prime example of a lien, right? This was an empty lot. The city likes to keep up with their properties, right? So what happened was, if the owner's not paying their property taxes, the grass was being cut for years. So who was cutting the grass? You think the owner was cutting the grass if he wasn't paying his property taxes? So when I got that property, I had what was called lot clearance liens that I owed, because the city was paying someone to literally go cut that grass every so often, and it had accrued.
Oh, wow.
And by the time I was the owner, after 2 years, 2 or 3 years, that lot just sitting there, it was $3,000. So
Hmm.
that's just to give you an example of a lien that will stick. Typically, if someone did some work on it, it it'll stick. Now there's other types of lien. The Department of Justice, previous owner was doing so much tax fraud that he owed like $1 million. And when we finally found, that DOJ lien, it was like $1 million lien that they had on the property. My attorney was like, "Hey, stay away from that." Right. So
Yeah.
it could be so many different scenarios.
Yeah, so it's not necessarily like a lot of people I feel like are trying to find the easiest way to make a crap ton of money. But I guess so like you still have a lot of work you have to do even when you do buying these houses for pretty cheap, but you still have a lot of work and process you have to do. So what happened after that? So you still just only do tax deeds? Like what's the next step for you?
Man, so we definitely still do the tax deeds because it's one acquisition strategy that's awesome. I encourage people to have at least 3 acquisition strategies, right? Because you want all the opportunity in the world, right? Whatever presents, that's what we do. So now we're doing tax deeds, we're doing the burr, we fix and flip. Well, actually buy and hold more so. We convert all ours to short-term rentals
Yeah.
after we cash out refinance, multifamily investing. Whatever makes sense is what's getting done. We even did a wholesale a couple months ago, right? So whatever makes sense, and it's at the table in front of us, we'll figure out, creatively what's the best strategy to do to acquire that.
So what do you prefer? Do you prefer long-term rentals over short-term rentals? Like what do you prefer?
At this time, we are Airbnb Superhost, and I'm loving it.
Yeah.
The long-term tenants were always an issue. They're destroying the asset. They just don't treat it like it's theirs, right? Because it's not. But at least with the short-term rentals, they're there and then they leave, right? You can come in after each stay, especially if you're keeping your properties close to you. You can come in, see the damages. If something happens, you can fix it real quick, and you're making 2 to 3 times the cash flow versus a long-term tenant in most scenarios.
Yeah, so we just bought a Airbnb early this year, and I really like them. I like it because if you buy right, you can do like a hybrid of everything. Like, okay, worst case scenario, I do it long term, but the best use for this property is short term, and then you cash flow that way. But even if like legally or like here in Virginia, Virginia Beach is illegal for Airbnbs. You can't do Airbnbs there. So even the laws come back at you, you could still cash flow pretty good. So I like hybrids where it's like, okay, well, you can kind of do both. So
Yeah, it's important to understand for anybody that's thinking about, coming into real estate or just new. It's important to understand that when an obstacle presents in front of you, then you figure out how to get around it, right? So many people get overwhelmed, they want to quit, but like you just said, when it happens, then you figure out what your next course of action is going to be. That's real life. It's not a multiple choice. It's not a A, B, C, or D test, right? Select
yeah,
one answer. Real life is just, okay, what can I do here now that it's here in front of me?
yeah. I know we just threw a lot of information out for people, but I know you told me that you were in the army. Like, what really made you like transition to like, hey, like, okay, I don't want to just work a salary. Hey, I want to create generational wealth, or like, what's your big why of like help motivate you to, I mean, hustle like you hustle.
Man, they say how you do anything is how you do everything, right? So if you're a half-ass type of worker, you're probably gonna always be a half-ass worker in any environment, right? So what happened was I was always this, I was an awesome soldier, scored perfect on everything, physical fitness, test, whatever it was. And after deploying, I had deployed twice, and then I had a daughter, and I missed out the first year of my daughter's life, being it wasn't Afghanistan. I was actually over in Kuwait this time, and I missed out on like the whole first year of her life. And I was like, you know what? I'm not really trying to leave anymore. The money that we made wasn't really enough to be away from family for another year. So I was looking at doing a third year, and I didn't even know what country they were going to send me to. They were like, "Hey, look, you're either going to go to Afghanistan or here or here." I wasn't about to roll the dice anymore. So when my contract came up, I was like, you know what? If I can do this good in the army, I'm going to do this good anywhere. And and I had some time to really be a civilian because I went to the National Guard. So I was only going, 1 week in a month, and then I had already started nursing and started to develop that career. So I just knew I was gonna be good at anything that I put my mind to, and it was time to take a chance on me, right? I was tired of clocking in and clocking out. So many hours putting into somebody else's business. I didn't have time to focus on myself, physically, mentally, or spiritually. But took that chance, put that time into myself as an entrepreneur, and definitely proud of that decision and not regretting it at all.
Yeah, I completely agree with definitely with when you were saying about like missing your child's like memories. I feel like you can always get back more money. You can always get more money, but you can't buy back time. Like once you lose that, it's gone. And I feel like that's what I've noticed when I've talked to a lot of people. It's not necessarily like, oh, I want to become the next Donald Trump or Elon Musk billionaire. I just want to be able to do when I want, whenever I want, so I can be there for my family, like have more time freedom. Is that kind of how like your biggest motivation was? Hey, I want to actually be there for my kids and family, rather than always.
After for anybody who's still working, when you have to request days off, right, that sucks. Have you ever got a day off denied? That's when it really hits, like, wow, they told me I can't go on vacation because two other people are going, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that in real estate, there is none of that. The properties are still making money, whether I'm in Cancun or New York or California. The properties are still making money, right? So I could just bring my family with me. It's a completely different lifestyle.
Yeah, or like a lot of people like even at the shipyard around here, it's like, oh, you work like what, like 10,000 hours and you get like 40, like to maybe use what you want, and then even they complain about that. So yeah, I do understand that, because it's like, because I'm like definitely myself right now. It's like, hey, I'm trying to buy them back time. Like money's not necessarily important. I'm trying to spend as much possible time with like my family, because you never, first off, you never know what's gonna happen. And like definitely little kids, they grow up so fast. But yeah. So like, other than like your family, do you have like something like, because you're already killing it? Because I know like you're about to take down like a big multi-family. Like, what really pushes you to like keep going? Like, because you're destroying the tax deeds. I know you're getting Airbnbs. You just took over like large multifamily. Like, what keeps you going?
Honestly, at this point, it's the end goal, and it's other people. It's other people. Like my wife is my family, but now with the community that we've grown, like if I gave up today, if I just stopped, like you know what, I'm not teaching anymore.
Yeah,
There's about 500 people that that would be screwed. You know what I mean? And that's at this time. There's probably gonna be 500 plus organization. So, you know, at this point, and there's no way I can give it. You saw my team in here earlier. Like even them, they have more properties to get. You know, they got families too. They got money to make.
yeah,
It's not about me anymore. It's about you know what? It's about younger me. It's about younger me. So I can do the things that I needed to see growing up. Honestly, to be that role model that I never had. So it's about those little kids out there that didn't get to see how cool being a real estate investor is.
yeah.
The kids that still want to be a basketball player or a rapper because that's that's what they think is the only way out.
Yeah, that's what I've learned. Like, definitely, like more getting into business. Like, I've learned my true happiness isn't necessarily like if let's say I buy a property, like it's very transactional and it doesn't really mean much to me. But like helping people, I feel like you get so much fulfillment as like because you see the joy in them, and that in turn makes like me happy, like helping and serving people. And I believe that's like the true like way to success and way to like is just helping people, like helping serve people and making other people's lives better. So what deals are you doing now? Like, are you, because I know you kind of have your hand in a little bit of everything. Like, what are you? Because I know we were talking about like you have this multifamily down in Daytona Beach right now that you're really trying to take on. Like, what are you doing right now?
So right now we have a duplex in New Orleans that's should almost be finished rehab, and we're about to convert that to short-term rentals as well, both sides. And that's literally like 5 minutes away from the French Quarter. So it was an awesome investment, close to literally in my childhood neighborhood where I grew up. And we have my business partner here is closing on a single family that we're converting it to two doors, right? So that's going to be awesome. And then we have the 17 unit in Daytona Beach. Right now, I think, yeah, sometimes you have to think about it. Like, wait, do I have anything else going on?
Yeah,
But no, those are our three big ones right now. We also have a few little investments that we just purchased in Alabama recently. A couple that some of our students are doing in Texas. We have a partnership down there too. That's a redemption deed state. But if I'm not actively doing something, then I'm actively walking someone else through a deal or
yeah.
partnering up with them on it, right? Some type of JV partnership, like, hey, let's do this. But those are our main three. The duplex, I mean the apartment complex in Daytona Beach.
That's the
That's
big
the
one.
biggest one. Yeah, that's the biggest one, man. 17 units, and we're gonna convert to short-term rental.
There
It's
you go.
it's gonna be awesome.
So how are you financing your deals? Are you using like the small like tax deed, rolling them over into like funneling that into the big deeds? Like how are you going about financing? Or are you just like bringing the deal to investors like, hey, this is what makes sense? Like how are you financing all your investments?
So OPM all day, right? Bank is gonna give us 75%, and then we're gonna syndicate the other 25%. And we try to keep our, of course, our general partners and everything. We'll all invest if we have room for limited partners and there's investment opportunities, then we're gonna look for other investors to come in on the deal as well if they want to grow their money.
Okay, so I know like for most syndications you have to file a certain amount of paperwork. What are you filing like a 506B or 506C, and are y'all only taking accredited investors?
So we are a 506B. So of course we can't advertise, technically, but we have room for non-accredited investors still. So there's 35 slots for sophisticated investors typically, and sometimes people will be like, "Hey, we only want accredited investors anyway." but you are allowed those 35 slots for non-accredited investors or sophisticated investors. So we like to allow others to join in if they can. Now we do have minimum investment amounts typically, right? Like we won't let somebody come in for just 1,000, but if someone doesn't have 100K to put in, if 100K is our minimum, and someone has like 50K or 20K, typically we'll try to use up, at least half of the slots. You don't want too many people on the deal, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But if there's room and it permits, we'll definitely give some other individuals a chance, because it's all about helping each other out. It's all about
Yeah.
growth.
And that's why it stinks, because I feel like even like a 506B, you can't market, you can't do any of these things to like tell all these people. It's like you have to have like a previous relationship with an investor that you're doing. That's what's so good about like networking, because I think the system's almost like it's kind of like screws the middle class and the lower income, because it's like people that need to invest in those deals. It's like the system says like, oh well, they're not sophisticated or smart enough, so they can't invest in those deals. And I feel like that's like the people that really need to do that, they don't even allow to do it. So I feel like the system's like designed to like screw over the little guy.
The rich get richer.
Yeah, exactly. But what would be your piece of advice? Like, okay, someone needs to establish a relationship to do a 506B. Like, what's like your like, how would you go about like just finding those people, reaching out to them, getting establishing a relationship prior, and then maybe getting investment opportunities later? Like, how would you suggest building that relationship?
Yeah, the biggest thing that I've learned in my real estate investing career is that it's all about relationship building, right? But when you think about relationship building, it takes time. I think that's one of the biggest things I didn't realize. You don't just meet someone today and suddenly you will give them $100,000. You know what I mean? Like you won't raise money just by meeting people same day. So it's important to start building relationships now, right? Today, like
Yeah,
when you don't have a deal, you should still be building relationships. And building a relationship isn't like, hey Tyler, what's up? Let me follow you on IG. Building a
yeah,
relationship is follow-ups. Hey Tyler, like how we got on this podcast today. Hey Joe, hey taxdeedwolf, what's going on? It's been a minute, right? You have to continue to foster those relationships and continue to build a rapport. And that's one thing that a lot of people don't realize. You can't just message someone when it's time for you to ask them for something. And that goes for family, that goes for anything, being a good person, business partner, whatever. So I think that's the biggest advice I can give to someone, is just start building the relationships now and make sure you're continuing to, build up upon that relationship, not just
yeah.
meeting people.
So I really love the book. I'm a big reader. I really love the book by Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. It talks about like thinking from their perspective and how can I help them? How do I help add them value? I think that shows like a lot of like, hey, like, okay, well, this person's doing this thing. Like, of course, they have times money, but it's like, how do I really help this person? That's what really got me into like the servants mentality. It's like, it's also helps business, but it also helps relationships. It helps make people like your relationship with people better. It's more or less just serving, and that's why I feel like that book. I recommend anyone going to get that book and reading it. It's just about being a servant and not for any like strings attached. That will help add value and build your network by just helping other people. So.
Yeah, definitely. And the cool thing about that book too, and the cool thing about all of this stuff we're talking about, the growth, right? All the books, is that they're life skills. They're not just related to just real estate. So it's awesome if you start reading these books and start taking some of these techniques, these strategies, you're gonna become a better person, even if you work at McDonald's. Like you'll go from crew member to manager with some of these strategies, and that's what's really great about it. So a lot of people, I don't think, take that serious enough, that if you grow as a person, you're gonna be a good person and an asset to any team, regardless of where you go, probably
Yeah.
regardless of whatever country you're even in.
Yeah. I also think like trying to find ways to get in the right room. Like for instance, like how we met. I went all the way to Vegas this past July for a business conference, and it was like you, this I can't remember this guy's name, but had a healthcare fund, and then Ryan Pineda, like circles like that, like just trying to find your way to get into people that you know are doing a lot of business, meeting and networking with these people, like that's how we met, that's how we stay connected, and just finding like ways to like get in like other rooms like that. What's your thoughts on like going to masterminds, like getting into like getting in front of the almost the right people?
It's super important. A lot of us, to be honest, there's people right here that's going to be listening to this that are still hanging around the wrong people. So you got to make the sacrifice. Some people, you got to learn to love from afar sometimes too. So we probably have family or really close friends that we need to distance ourselves from because they're holding us back. And it could be this the negative energy, constantly coming to you with the same problems, whatever it is, they're probably holding us back, right? So when you get around like-minded individuals, especially sitting at that table with Ryan and this other guy with all these with the assistant living facilities and
Yes,
stuff,
exactly.
like that's life-changing stuff. You have no choice but to grow. And it's super important to stay surrounded by people that are not so much that are just doing better with you, but it's different conversations that you can even learn from. So we're learning things every time we talk to each other, and that's really beneficial, very beneficial. When you learn from every conversation, that's dangerous.
Did you have to do any like thinking internally, like when you were growing, like growing your business, growing yourself internally? Did you feel like you had to do anything with like other relationships, like maybe this relationship wasn't best for me, or kind of like how did you kind of like handle all that, because you're focusing on you, trying to better yourself, but I mean a lot of people are kind of negative, they can bring you down, like how do you handle that tough situation?
That's a good question. Like, my wife and I talk about that all the time, because she's a little younger than me, right?
Yeah.
So she's going through some of the things that I already went through, right? Cutting people off and losing friends that you think you're gonna be friends for your entire life, and then things happen. So I for me it was as simple as just stop showing up. Like, hey, there's a party going on this date, and these people are gonna be there. I'm like, oh, you know what? I'm not going.
Yeah.
And it's just the power of no is strong. Hey, you want to come out to the bar? Oh, you know what? I don't drink anymore. No.
Yeah.
The power of no, it's life changing. You know what I mean? So it was pretty simple for me. It was a sacrifice, I will say, because being in the army and everything, I used to love to drink. I'm not gonna lie. I used to love to drink. That's one sacrifice that I did make. I was wasting time. I
Oh
was out
yeah.
partying, drinking
And a
for
lot of
what?
money.
Yeah, a lot of money for what? It wasn't. It really wasn't helping me at all. I wasn't the same person when I did, so I was just like, you know what, I gotta stop this. And it's hard in the beginning, but as time goes on, you start see it paying off.
Yeah, and I think like most relationships, it's like you got that relationship because you had to share a past together. But it's also thinking about like, what about a shared future? Where do you want to go? Like, what's the relationships you need to have that will help better you as in a person? And I feel like that's kind of a tough situation, and it's like a lot of times it's really hard because a lot of times, let's say you have a relationship with this person from probably since the beginning, since the beginning of your time. It's like really hard. Like, hey, you want to help those people, but maybe they're not ready to be helped. I feel like that's a very tough situation to navigate.
There's strikes, right? We always say like three strikes, you're out type of deal. If there's no growth, I just, I hate to sound like this, but you just might have to cut that person off. If every time you're around each other, if all they want to talk about, especially for us, like being men, like at some point, the conversations had to stop being about just girls. You know what I mean? At some point, like we had to get together and not talk about just women or not talk about partying. Like when we had conversation in Vegas, it was like, hey man, what's the next investment? How are we, growing? How are we elevating? It wasn't like, hey, what clubs are close? You know what I mean? It's just
Yeah.
a completely different, completely different mindset.
So I know, speaking of one of those conversations we had in Vegas, we were talking about like building like our own personal brands, like how much money we invest in every month. Like, what really made you? Because I knew you have a large following on social media. Like, what really made you really invest into your own personal brand to help grow your network? Like, what really made you decide to, hey, I need to focus on investing in my network, my brand? Like, what really made you decide to do that?
I think it was Grant Cardone was talking about. I think we are on Clubhouse talking one day, and he said like, "Hey, look, I don't care if your product's better than mine. If they don't see you, you ain't selling a damn dime." And he said it like that straightforward, and he was right. So last year or 2 years ago, I don't know if you saw the story, but I got stopped by the cops. I was jogging,
Yeah.
and they like pulled me over, put me in cuffs and everything. They said I fit some description, and it went pretty viral. After that, I was just kind of like, you know what? It kind of stuck with me. They didn't know who I was, right? They
Yeah.
literally had no idea I was just another, another guy, another black guy jogging. And I was like, you know what? People really need to know who I am. Like that, I was like, the world's gonna know. And so
Yeah.
when I decided to do this tax deed wolf thing, it wasn't a hush hush thing. I was like, the world is gonna know who I am, what I stand for, and the power that we have, and the level of things that we can do to help them, right? And that's what did it.
So not to touch on a sensitive topic, but how did that all come about? Like, how did that scenario happen? Like, you're just jogging early morning, and they like how's how'd that happen? I feel like that's a very interesting story.
So it was like 2 days after my youngest daughter was born. She's almost two now. So next month she'll be two. 2 days after she was born, I had gained a little baby weight, right? Wife was in the hospital and stuff. Like I had put on some pounds, and I was like, I need to go run. So I just went for a run, and just timing. Apparently, there was a robbery going on around the
Hmm.
same time, and so when the cop I'm just running, literally, I'm just jogging, have my headphones in, and the cop's sitting there. I waved at him, like, hey, I'm just in my own world. What's up? Just kept running. And then he pulls up behind me. He's like, hey, he explains to me, like, hey, you literally fit the description of a robbery. They said white tank top, this black male, white tank top, this and that. And so, they put me in cuffs
Did you
and
say no? That guy ran that way.
no, I was just at first I didn't even it wasn't even registering. Like I was like, holy crap. And then at that time you heard so much going on in the news. So I was just like, all right, I'm gonna calm down. I'm a calm person anyway. So just talking to him and he explained everything and eventually they let me go after a witness drove by and was like, oh no, that's not him. But it was a life changing experience, definitely to because what I think about is really, Tyler, is what if the witness said, you know what, I think that's him. That's what really goes on in my head. It's not about that it like I was let go, but what if she like thought it was me? Right? My whole life could have been changed in an instant. And that was the real eye-opening moment in that instance. Like my whole life, even if eventually I was let go, how much attorney fees would I have had? How would that have changed my relationship with my wife?
Yeah.
How would that have affected my career currently I was an assistant manager of the ICU. You know what I mean? Like that
Yeah.
was so life changing.
Yeah. And well, at least you didn't have cut her off running or something. Because they should have definitely like, nope, that was him. That was him. Yeah. Oh man. But yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, it's definitely like that's why I try to take like every single day like living to its fullest because I mean you never know what's gonna happen. Like something crazy could happen and your life can end in an instant. It's like I just at least personally I'm like man, how can I live life to the fullest every single possible day? Because you never know what can happen and you could be taken away from your kids to tomorrow and like always putting everything I got every single day. I think that's extremely important. But definitely like that affect you like that was probably the main thing that really helped you like okay now I need to get famous or get known.
Not now I have the sheriff on speed dial. So
Oh,
it's
there you go.
pretty cool. Yeah, we taught classes, we taught racial biasing training
Hmm.
and stuff like that. Cause it's stuff that I was trained to do in the military. At one of my jobs was a military police at one point. So he actually offered me a job and everything. It was eventually it turned out what started could have been a negative situation depending on how I reacted actually turned into like me being on worldwide news. I was on interviews like with Brazil and like I mean it was everywhere. I had people from other countries finding my page and stuff and reaching out saying how awesome I was and stuff.
Was this
So
before or after tax deed wolf?
This was before Tax Deed Wolf,
Man, too bad you weren't wearing like a shirt that said like "Tax
right?
Deed Wolf, follow me" or
Oh,
something.
that would have been awesome
Yeah,
publicity, right?
yeah, exactly. But so how does that work? Like I know, like as I'm not really real estate related, but I'm very interested. Like how do they go about like doing stuff like that? Like you said, you were helping with the cops, like that stuff you did in the military. How do you like how does that work?
How does that work? What, in the
Like
military or?
yeah, you said talking about like not racially profiling and stuff like that. How does that work when you like you said you're helping the cops like with that certain thing?
So there was actually, believe it or not, because of so much bad media that they were getting,
Yeah.
they actually already had programs in place. So what they did was they partnered me up with the individual who was running the program, and so
Mm-hmm.
I went over there a couple of times, and they had me like guest speak and everything. And one of the real things that we were really teaching, to be honest, was just like empathy. You know, putting yourself in the other person's shoes. Like, yeah, you have a gun, pointing a gun at someone is gonna freak them the crap out, right? It doesn't
Yeah.
really
Right.
matter who it is. You can't be aggressive all the time. And in other countries, that's the reason I was trained, because you can't do certain things like that. Like how you look at women in America, you might get stoned for looking at a woman in another country. You know what I mean? They might be wearing different things. You're supposed to talk to the husband. Just little things that you have to understand. And which is crazy. We all live in America, but you know how many different cultures are actually in America. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So when you're dealing with different people, you have to know how to approach them a certain way.
I think that's the big issue with America in general. Is like we don't ever see like outside our like circle. We don't ever see from other people's like point of view at all. Like if they're having a bad day and you just like scream and go off the handle or something, but you don't see like, hey, what could this person possibly going through that makes them feel this way? And I try to like more I've learned and educated myself. It's like how do I see from this person's perspective? Like how do I know I wouldn't be acting that way if I went through their scenarios? Like I feel like that's very like when you talk about empathy, that's very true because you don't know like maybe if I went through that stuff that they did, I wouldn't be in the same situation. So
That's
that's
that's life changing, because we actually just went through that. My team members closing on a house, and
yeah,
the guy's going through a divorce, and they kind of got into it the other day, right? But she had the composure to not argue and really sit back and think like, okay, how would I feel and if I was him? You know what I mean? And that
yeah.
that man, that's powerful when you can understand how to put yourself in someone else's shoes, and ultimately just learning communication. That's going to change your life, because that not only goes with like friends, that goes to spouses, right? Partners, that goes to even kids. Learning how to,
Yeah.
talk to your kids and have them open up to you. That'll take you really far.
I think communication is definitely a big thing. Like definitely like learning how to see from other people's perspectives. That helps you with everything. Like you said, like marriage and all that stuff. That even helps you in real estate. Like I feel like a lot of real estate investors, at least I know, it's like oh I'm just trying to get as much possible can, screw the other person, and it's like creating win-win scenarios. Like hey, how do I help them? How do I help me? How do they kind of co-align, creating win-win scenarios? And I feel like thinking from that perspective with communicating is definitely a way to do that. It's definitely a way I feel like helps you be successful. Like even you mentioned joint ventures, just like, hey, what's their goals? What's their passions? How does it go along with my goals? And how do we like win-win together?
And that's ultimately how we do get so many, properties. We got a tax deed deal before it went to auction, just from having sympathy, talking to the person, just and like I said, my business partner too. That was he talked to other people about selling that property, but ultimately it was her being a family oriented person and understanding, and the way she talked to him about how can we help, you know how can we help you, like if we did this for you, would that help? It's helping us too, right? It's helping her too, but you have to figure out how can it be a win-win. That man, your life will be you'll do a complete 180 and start going in the other direction when you really understand communication, relate and relationship building.
Yeah, I think that definitely goes along the lines when you were saying how you finance your deals is other people's money. I feel like everyone's like, oh, I'm gonna invest this, I'm gonna get other people's monies, but they don't actually see like, hey, how do I help this other person wants to make money. They want their money to work for them. It's like, hey, how do I go about helping them make money so in that return helps me? Is that kind of like how you talk to your private investors? Like, hey, what's your needs? What kind of returns you're looking for? How can I help you achieve your goals and align that along with yourself?
Yeah, definitely. And one thing that we do is our returns are dependent sometimes upon how bad we want the deal. So it's a matter of not being greedy too. So to give you a prime example, one deal that we're recently doing is we had two investors come in at 25K, right? Now a normal investment, 25K investment, you might be lucky in under, shoot, if you put that money in the bank, let's talk about that. How much would you get off 25K? But with this
Point
deal,
zero zero
right?
zero zero.
With this deal, the investors, each of them are getting 5,000 a month for 2 months, right? It's a little really quick investment, but what person like who does that? 25K to get 35K back in 2 months? That's an awesome investment, right? That's
Yeah,
5K a month. A Airbnb, somebody's short-term rental might not make that 5K in a month, right? You could have two homes, three homes that might not be bringing in 5K a month. You know what I
yeah,
mean? So it was a matter of not being greedy too. So we help these investors out for this 2 months. Guess what they're gonna do? They're gonna invest again,
yeah,
right? And that was an awesome investment. They made a promise on that return. We got the return. Shoot, they won $1 million lawsuit now. Guess who's putting 500K in your next multifamily deal?
yeah. And guess who's telling all their friends that like, hey, this was how this person helped me, and on and on and on and on.
Definitely.
So, but
Sometimes you don't go to them, you go through them, right?
yeah, there you go.
Yeah, sometimes a no is like, all right, well, who do you know?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
definitely.
So kind of wrap this up. If you could go back and you were just getting out doing the military, how would you like would you do anything different? Like how would you help someone else? Like how do you help your students like, hey, this is how you get started, this is the track, this is what I would do if I would go back. Like what's the direction you lead someone to when they're just getting into real estate?
And you know what's funny? It's almost we have the same blueprint, right? With our academy, whenever anyone comes into our course, it's first things first. They need to understand business, proper business structure, right? So many people just make an LLC and they think they're a business owner. Well, the LLC's in their name, it's in their personal address, and all this and all that. They're not being protected. They don't know how to, funnel their money between what bank accounts for strategic tax reasons and to be able to get approved for funding, so many different things. So it starts with understanding, right? Then it leads into credit because credit is very, very important, especially in the beginning. And then while you're doing this, you're networking, you're getting around the right crowd because, like you said, being in the room is everything. Being in the right rooms. So you're in these right rooms. You're working on yourself. You have access to funding now because of your credit. You got approved for lines of credit. Now, just because you're where you are, opportunities coming to you, right? Literally just from me sitting at the same table with you, opportunity came. And
Yeah,
that's just how life's gonna work for anyone else. So we're walking them through these basic structural things, having a team. I have all my students have a real estate agent, a wholesaler, attorney in their state, right? Building a proper team, a contractor. You're gonna need all these things. And then as they're going on, then we're talking about tax deed investing, how to do fix and flips. We're partnering up with the right lenders, right? Lenders that can loan them money, and we've already developed them to where they need to be. So we know the lender's going to give them the money, and we showed them everything, what to look for, how to get leads coming to them. Because to be honest with you, with my social media, man, I think some people just think it's cool to like invest with the tax deed wolf. So leads just come, right? Leads are just coming in. So we teach our students the same thing: what to post on your social media, have those leads coming in, how to partner up, JV agreements, and we have our own connections too. How to get a tax deed property cleared in under 14 days. That's something that a lot of tax sale investors don't know about, but that's something
yeah.
that we have in our academy. So just life changing stuff, man. And then they're connected with us. We do weekly calls. Every Wednesday we have a class. Every Friday we have Q&A call. We have our private group chat. They can ask questions. They're never alone. It's all about the network,